Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that moves in silence, hidden away from most eyes, and yet it shapes whole landscapes without asking for attention. You picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast desert. The sand stretches endlessly, dunes rising and falling like waves that have forgotten the sea they once belonged to. Beneath those dunes, far deeper than your eyes can reach, a hush exists, the hush of rivers, buried under endless sands. They do not rush or roar the way mountain streams do. Instead, they murmur, trickling slowly, sometimes barely moving at all, as though time itself is stretched thin in these dry places. As you stand in this imagined stillness, you notice how quiet the desert is. No leaves rustle here, no flowing streams sparkle in the sunlight. But scientists know and storytellers imagine that beneath your feet, hidden aquifers carry water that once ran freely on the surface. These aquifers are the ancient memory of rivers, silent, patient, and unseen. They might be so deep that it would take days of digging to reach them, and yet they remain cradled in stone, as if the desert holds on to a secret it isn't ready to share. You think about glaciers moving across continents, the hush of ice grinding rock into dust, and how that dust became the sand now lying underfoot. Some of those glaciers thousands of years ago melted and fed mighty rivers which carved paths across regions now swallowed by deserts. You probably wouldn't last long standing here in reality. Your throat would dry, your skin would burn. But tonight, you can wander safely through it, your curiosity the only thing leading you forward. Beneath you, the hush of those hidden currents is almost like the background hum of a fan in your room, steady and subtle, guiding you into rest. And you might wonder, if rivers vanish from the surface, do they ever truly die, or do they simply retreat into the hidden bones of the earth? Scientists remind us that deserts aren't always what they seem. Beneath the Sahara, for instance, there are enormous aquifers storing water left over from wetter times. That water is fossil water, ancient, irreplaceable, a remnant from when rains swept across lands that are now bone dry. Imagine drinking from a glass of water that has been resting underground since the last ice age. People do. In places like Libya and Chad, wells reach down into those aquifers, tapping a resource that feels as old as memory itself. There's also a quirky thought. Camels, the famous ships of the desert, can detect the smell of underground water. Some nomads still claim that a camel will pause and lower its nose toward the sand, as though sensing the unseen. Whether that is a fable or a subtle truth remains debated, but the image lingers. Picture a caravan moving slowly across golden dunes, each step crunching softly, until the lead camel stops, sniffing. Beneath its feet, perhaps, lies the ancient murmur of a buried stream. Scientists still wonder whether these aquifers connect like veins across the desert, or whether they are scattered pockets, isolated from one another. If they are connected, it means there could still be hidden rivers flowing slowly in the dark, rivers that move without ever surfacing, sculpting the earth from below. If not, then each aquifer is simply a quiet pool, resting alone in its sandy tomb. Either way, the idea settles into you. Beneath the silence of the dunes, life still lingers. So you take a step forward, feeling the cool, imagined current beneath your soles, and you let the desert's vastness fade into a backdrop of calm. The rivers whisper beneath the sand, and you walk on, guided not by sight but by the steady rhythm of hidden waters. You keep walking across the desert, and the sand feels endless, like the sea frozen in place. But then, scattered across the barren surface, you begin to notice faint lines, shallow depressions, almost like scars etched into the land. They're not valleys in the dramatic sense. No rivers flow here anymore, no green ribbons mark their presence. Yet these are the traces of forgotten currents carved into stone long ago. They appear like whispers of geography, clues to a past when water had the patience to write its story slowly, letter by letter, into the Earth's surface. You crouch closer, running your hand over the faint channel of one of these dry beds. The texture is rough, baked under countless suns. Once, this groove may have echoed with splashing fish and chirping birds along the shore. Now it is only silence, and yet silence carries its own meaning. You realize that these empty channels are not just voids, they are reminders. The desert remembers. Here's a fact you hold on to. Scientists use satellite imaging to map these ghost rivers. From above, the faint outlines stretch for hundreds of miles, winding in graceful curves like snakes frozen mid-slither. In the Sahara, for example, pale strips of stone trace the path of rivers that once crossed entire countries. From the ground, you'd never guess. But the earth still bears its memories, just waiting to be seen from the right angle. And there's a quirky tidbit, almost playful in the quiet. Sometimes sandstorms will uncover ancient tools or shells in these riverbeds. Imagine finding a seashell in the middle of the Sahara, far from any ocean. Travelers sometimes stumble across them, holding the curved fossils in their hands, marveling at the thought that this was once a shore. It's like the desert itself occasionally drops hints, teasing you with reminders of its wetter, greener youth. You begin to wonder, did animals follow these ancient rivers the way we follow roads today? Scientists still debate whether herds of early humans and wildlife migrated along these channels, drawn by the reliable promise of water. Perhaps these now empty grooves once carried stories of laughter, survival and journeys, their soundtracks now lost to time. Were these rivers highways of life, or fleeting oases that appeared and vanished too quickly for civilizations to hold on to? The longer you walk, the more you notice how the dunes themselves seem to bend around invisible paths, as though even the sand respects the memory of water. You let your imagination fill in the sound, the murmur of flowing water where there is none, the call of birds circling above a river that no longer exists. You almost hear it, like an echo so faint you're not sure if it's real or your mind's lullaby. Your steps follow the groove, and it feels like tracing a storyline with your finger across an ancient manuscript. The ink may have faded, but the words are still there. These channels are the earth's handwriting, telling you that rivers never truly vanish. They leave behind veins of memory, fragile but enduring. And in the stillness of the desert, you can almost believe the currents are still there, just deeper, quieter, waiting to be rediscovered. The sun dips lower in your imagination, painting the horizon gold. The lines of the desert glow softer, almost like ripples on water at dusk. And as you keep walking along the faint channel, you feel the weight of time gently pressing around you, not heavy, not harsh, just steady, like a reminder that the past still breathes beneath the surface. You follow the ghostly lines deeper into the dunes, and soon your mind drifts further back, beyond memory, beyond story, into an age when these deserts were seas. It's difficult to picture because all you see is sand, but you close your eyes and the silence around you becomes a canvas for what once was. Suddenly the dunes flatten into wide plains and the heat softens into humidity. You feel the shift as you imagine rivers swelling with glacial meltwater, feeding lakes that shimmer under a greener sky. During the last few million years, climates pulsed in rhythms, swinging between dry spells and wetter ages. In one of those wet periods, what is now the Sahara was carpeted in grasslands, dotted with lakes as large as seas. Scientists call it the African humid period, when monsoon rains drenched the continent, filling valleys and carving wide rivers that connected to the Nile. Herds of gazelle, elephants, and giraffes roamed across lands that are now empty dunes. You picture them moving slowly against the backdrop of savanna grass, the ground soft and wet under their feet. A quirky detail lingers, the rock art scattered across Saharan caves. People thousands of years ago painted hippos and crocodiles, animals that cannot survive without steady water. The art isn't just decoration, it's testimony. Each painted hippo is a witness whispering across millennia, telling you, the desert you stand in now once roared with rivers. Imagine stumbling across one of these paintings, half hidden by time, showing creatures basking where there is now only silence. You wonder, how did those rivers vanish? Scientists still debate. Some argue that shifts in Earth's orbit tilted the balance of monsoons, withdrawing the rains. Others suggest gradual desertification as forests retreated and grasslands gave way to dust. Did the rivers dry slowly, leaving time for people and animals to adapt? Or did they vanish abruptly, forcing migrations and rewriting the map of early civilizations? That question remains unanswered, like a stone unturned beneath layers of sand. You open your eyes again, and the desert around you still looks dry, but now you can almost see the shimmer of water superimposed on the horizon, like a mirage with roots in truth. You imagine standing at the edge of an ancient shoreline where waves once lapped against soft earth. The air would have smelled of damp soil and blooming plants, a scent so different from the dry dust that now fills your lungs. The wind you feel is the same, though it has always carried whispers of change, whether across grasses or across dunes. Walking forward, you picture the transition, the lakes shrinking, the rivers narrowing, until only dry channels remained. Maybe in some places the water retreated underground, unwilling to leave completely. You realize this cycle of abundance and silence is part of Earth's rhythm. Deserts are not lifeless mistakes, but chapters in a much longer story. They are pauses, breaths between the verses of rain. The stars begin to prick the sky above you, faint and steady. You imagine them reflecting off the surface of a vanished sea, twinkling across rippling water. For a moment, the desert feels like both things at once, a dry ocean of sand and a memory of water shimmering underneath. You let the paradox soothe you. In the quiet, you can hold both realities, knowing that the land beneath your feet has lived many lives. As you drift further along this imagined shoreline, you sense the ancient pulse of the planet still alive in the silence. Once seas, now sand, once rivers, now whispers. Nothing is gone completely. It simply waits.
You keep walking with the memory of vanished seas lingering in your mind, and soon your attention drifts downward, beneath the sand. You begin to sense the subtle murmur of aquifers, the underground reservoirs that hold water like veins beneath the desert's skin. They don't move in torrents, they seep, they linger, they press softly against stone. It feels almost like the earth itself is quietly breathing, exhaling moisture into hidden caverns. Aquifers are real, not just imagined. Scientists know the Sahara overlays one of the world's largest aquifer systems, stretching across countries and holding water that fell as rain tens of thousands of years ago. This water is fossil water, ancient, finite, irreplaceable. To drink from it is to taste the memory of climates long gone. Picture lowering a bucket into a deep, hand-dug well, hauling it up, and realizing that the water glistening inside might have last seen daylight during the Ice Age. That thought alone makes every sip feel like communion with the past. There's a quirky truth that always catches attention. When wells reach deep into these aquifers, the water can sometimes be warm, heated by the earth's embrace. Imagine dipping your hand into a desert well and feeling a gentle warmth, as if the earth itself has been holding the water close for centuries. In some places, the water even bubbles naturally to the surface, creating sudden oases, green patches of palm trees, birds, and insects thriving in stark contrast to the surrounding emptiness. But scientists still wonder, are these aquifers connected rivers, slowly flowing beneath the sands, or are they scattered pockets, trapped and isolated? If they flow, then the desert is not as silent as it seems. Beneath your feet, an invisible network hums, moving ever so slowly, carrying whispers of the past. If they are isolated, then each well is like a treasure chest buried in the earth, precious, but finite, emptied once and never refilled. The question remains unresolved, a debate between maps and models, still unfolding in quiet corners of geology labs. You imagine yourself lying down on the cool night sand, pressing your ear against the ground. Of course, you hear nothing, but in your imagination the desert floor murmurs with the faintest trickle. It's like the soft hum of a fan in your bedroom or the distant whoosh of traffic you almost forget to notice. This subterranean soundscape becomes your lullaby, guiding you into a calm where surface and depth blur. The stars above seem sharper in desert skies, and as you look up, you can't help but connect them to the unseen currents below. Both are hidden worlds, the rivers beneath your feet, the galaxies above your head, silent, infinite, and yet profoundly present. The desert, then, is not empty but layered, filled with secrets moving at their own pace. You take another slow step, and the image lingers. Below you, vast underground chambers hold rivers that no eye has ever seen. They murmur softly, patient as time itself, waiting for the world above to notice them again. You continue across the dunes, carrying with you the awareness of those hidden aquifers, and soon the landscape before you begins to unfold like a map. Not a modern paper map with neat lines and borders, but an ancient canvas drawn by water itself. The desert, though dry, still holds the imprints of vanished rivers, etched faintly into its surface like forgotten calligraphy. High above, satellites trace these signatures. From space, the Sahara is not just an ocean of sand, but a place of veins and arteries that once pulsed with life. The Tamanrasset River, for example, appears in satellite images as a great shadow stretching across Africa, once one of the largest rivers on Earth, larger even than the Nile, flowing thousands of miles toward the Atlantic. Now, its bed is hidden beneath dunes, its current long gone, but its outline remains visible, as though the desert cannot quite erase it. There's something strangely comforting about that. Rivers leave behind a memory that no amount of sand can bury completely. The earth keeps its diary, even if only satellites can read the words. These images show more than just science, they show the persistence of time, how water always insists on leaving its story behind. And there's a quirky little thought you can't shake. Sometimes, pilots flying low across desert landscapes notice faint green stripes, strips of vegetation stubbornly clinging to life. These plants are often rooted in the ghost channels of vanished rivers, drawing on moisture still lingering underground. Imagine flying overhead, looking down, and seeing thin ribbons of green winding through a landscape of gold. To the untrained eye, it might seem random, but to those who know, it's a clear signature. The memory of a river still supports life. Scientists still wonder about the full extent of these lost systems. How many of them still hold water below? Could some rivers, unseen, still flow in darkness, slowly eroding stone and carrying silt as if the desert above doesn't exist? Or are they entirely gone, replaced by silence, leaving only outlines for us to trace? The debate continues, and each discovery through radar or satellite deepens the mystery rather than solves it. As you walk, you imagine unrolling one of these satellite maps on the sand before you. The faint blue lines cross where your footsteps fall, invisible beneath the surface, but present in your imagination. You step along them, following their path as though you were a traveler guided by waterways no one else can see. The desert grows cooler as evening settles in, and the stars sharpen overhead. You think about how humans once navigated by the constellations, rivers of stars guiding them across land. Now, satellites orbit above, mapping rivers that have vanished from sight, their trails revealed only by technology. The symmetry soothes you, rivers above, rivers below, both weaving their hidden currents through time. Your steps feel steady, almost guided, as though the ghost rivers beneath you still carry a current that pulls you gently along their path. The desert does not resist, it remembers. And you, too, are remembering with each step. The lines of the ghost rivers fade behind you, and your thoughts drift toward a greener memory, the Sahara as it once was, alive with water, teeming with life. The idea feels impossible when you glance at the endless dunes surrounding you, but history whispers otherwise. The desert has not always been a desert. In fact, much of its past is written in lushness, in plains and savannas that would rival today's fertile lands. Imagine walking here 12,000 years ago. Instead of heat rising in shimmering waves, you would feel a breeze carrying the scent of damp grasses. Lakes the size of small seas dotted the horizon, and rivers braided across the land, feeding the Nile with even greater force than today. Herds of gazelle grazed near the water's edge, elephants trumpeted, and crocodiles basked lazily in the shallows. The Sahara was green, a sweeping savanna where life thrived. This is not just imagination, it's fact. Archaeologists have found bones of giraffes, elephants, and even hippos preserved in places where not a single drop of surface water exists now. Fossils of fish lie encased in stone far from any modern river or lake. These bones and scales are quiet witnesses, proof that the desert once carried far more than sand. And there's a quirky reminder etched onto cave walls. In places like Tassili Eniger in Algeria, paintings show people paddling canoes across open waters. Imagine that for a moment, canoes gliding across the very sands you walk on now, paddles slicing gently through fresh water under a hot sun. These artworks are more than decoration, they are records of a life that feels dreamlike against today's reality. Scientists still wonder what drove the transformation. Was it Earth's slow wobble on its axis that shifted the rains? Was it the weakening of monsoons, retreating steadily until grasslands withered? Or did human activity play a role, through grazing and burning that nudged the balance toward dryness? The debate continues, a reminder that deserts are fragile, dynamic, and shaped by countless influences. As you move further into this imagined green Sahara, you feel the hush of time pressing gently against you. You see herders leading cattle to the edge of a great lake, children laughing as they splash in shallow water. The sound echoes faintly, like a memory replayed in a dream. You reach down to pick up a piece of stone, and in your mind it becomes a tool, chipped by ancient hands to cut reeds or carve meat. Every stone could be a fragment of a story, every grain of sand a fossil of a lost plain. The night deepens, and stars spill across the sky like glittering lakes. You realize that the same constellations that guided ancient herders still shine above you now. The land has changed, but the heavens remain steady, watching over the Sahara's many lives. You keep walking, the memory of the green Sahara layering itself over the dunes. It soothes you, the thought that deserts are not barren mistakes but pauses in a longer cycle. One day, perhaps, rains will return, and the Sahara will bloom again, its green memory no longer just a whisper. You leave behind the vision of grassy plains and turn your gaze downward, as though the desert itself wants to show you its hidden museum. Scattered across the sands and embedded in rock are silent witnesses to that wetter world, fossilized fish. You bend low and picture yourself brushing sand away from a delicate imprint, the outline of fins, scales pressed like tiny armor into ancient stone. There's no ocean here, no shimmering lake, and yet the desert holds these remnants as if reluctant to let them go. It's a strange contrast, the most arid place on Earth carrying the memory of creatures that cannot live without water. Scientists have catalogued countless fossil beds across the Sahara, where fish bones and shells lie trapped in layers of sediment. These fossils tell a clear fact, that enormous lakes once stretched across the land, some of them rivaling inland seas in size. Lake Megachad, for instance, was once larger than all of today's Great Lakes combined. Imagine standing at its edge, waves lapping softly, dragonflies buzzing, the air thick with moisture. Now, in its place, is mostly desert, but the fish bones remember. And there's a quirky, almost whimsical tidbit here, some fossils reveal fish species that are still alive in faraway rivers today. Nile perch, for example, once swam in Saharan lakes. To imagine those same fish existing both in bustling modern waterways and in ghostly ancient ones ties time together like a thread. It's as if the species themselves are bridges, spanning across millennia, reminding us that life finds ways to persist even when landscapes collapse. But scientists still wonder exactly how quickly those lakes dried. Was it a slow retreat, each shoreline shrinking little by little until nothing remained? Or did entire lakes vanish in sudden pulses, leaving stranded fish to die out in shallow pools? The fossil record is clear about their existence but ambiguous about their disappearance. That mystery lingers like a half-told story, waiting for more pieces to be uncovered. As you walk deeper into the desert night, you picture fossilized fish glowing faintly beneath the sand, like lanterns buried underground. They are silent, yes, but they speak volumes. Each bone is a syllable, each shell a word, together forming sentences about rivers and lakes long gone. You don't need to hear them aloud, the story hums quietly in your imagination. The desert wind brushes against you, carrying a fine grit that feels almost like the scales of those ancient fish. You run your hand through the sand, and for a fleeting moment it feels like water slipping between your fingers, vanishing before you can hold it. The desert mimics the sensation, reminding you of what it once carried. Above, the stars will slowly, reflecting a permanence the rivers could not match. But even the stars are not eternal, they too will fade one day. You realize then that fossils are less about permanence and more about memory. They tell you that nothing truly disappears without leaving some trace behind. You walk on, feeling the weight of these buried fish beneath your steps, and the thought soothes you. The desert may seem lifeless, but in truth, it is crowded, with memories, with fossils, with whispers of water and creatures that once called this place home. You walk farther into the desert night, the stars bright above you, and the sand beneath your feet feels softer, almost as if it's guiding you towards something unseen. In your mind, the dunes part, and you imagine what lies below, buried oases, hidden pools of water, sheltered by layers of rock and sand. You picture them as secret gardens, concealed from the blazing sun, where palm roots sink deep to sip at hidden streams. These underground oases are not just fantasy. In Arabia, for example, wells have been dug for thousands of years to reach these hidden waters. Some of them tap directly into aquifers where rivers once flowed freely. The people who discovered them long ago must have felt as though they had stumbled into a miracle, green palms rising from a barren plain, reeds whispering in the breeze, water reflecting a sliver of moonlight. Even today, towns and villages in Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Yemen survive because of these hidden treasures. There's a quirky little image to hold on to. In certain places, the water trapped underground is so fresh and cold that it emerges as natural springs, feeding pockets of greenery that seem completely out of place. Imagine walking for days through a dry wasteland, only to suddenly find yourself in a valley filled with date palms, their fruits heavy with sweetness, their shade offering respite. That contrast feels like magic, though it's entirely natural, water simply insisting on finding its way back to the surface. But scientists still wonder how long these buried oases can last. Some aquifers are not replenished by rain anymore. They are fossil aquifers, containing water that fell thousands of years ago. Once drawn, they are gone forever, like drinking the last pages of a book that will never be rewritten. Others, however, may still be linked to hidden rivers underground, trickling slowly through limestone, feeding pockets of green in ways we cannot fully trace. The difference matters. It raises questions about whether the lush oases of tomorrow will survive, or whether they will fade into memory like so many rivers before them. You close your eyes and step into one of these imagined oases. You hear frogs croaking softly, insects buzzing in the reeds, and the rustle of palms in the evening breeze. The scent of wet earth rises, rich and soothing, mingling with the sweetness of fruit and the coolness of shade. You lower your hand into a spring, and the water feels alive, as though it has been waiting centuries just for this touch. The desert outside the oasis still stretches wide, but here inside, time seems slower. The oasis is a pocket of eternity, preserved against all odds, a reminder that even the harshest places carry softness hidden away. The stars above glitter, but here you also see their light reflected in the rippling pool. It feels like a mirror, connecting sky and earth in a single shimmer. You walk away from the oasis eventually, the sound of water fading behind you. But you carry its memory forward, just as the desert itself does, hidden, sheltered, waiting to resurface when the time is right. The memory of the oasis lingers behind you, but ahead, the desert stretches vast once again. As you walk, the sand begins to slope gently downward, and you imagine you are following the bones of something immense, something ancient, the skeleton of the Tamanrasset. This lost river is one of Africa's greatest hidden stories, a giant that once roared across the continent, larger even than the Nile. From space, its ghostly course is still visible, a wide scar etched into the land. Scientists discovered it using radar and satellite imaging, tracing its channels beneath the Sahara. At its peak, the Tamanrasset River stretched nearly 3,000 miles, gathering waters from the highlands of the Atlas Mountains and flowing westward all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Imagine the force of such a river, carving valleys, feeding forests, filling lakes, supporting animals and people in abundance. Yet today, all you see is sand. One established fact is astonishing: during wetter periods of the past, this river may have rivaled the Amazon in scale. Picture that, the Sahara, now the driest of deserts, once held a river system so vast it could have reshaped entire regions. The dunes you walk across tonight are not just dunes, they are the dry ribs of a giant waterway that once pulsed with unstoppable energy. Here's a quirky image: some geologists think that if you could drain the sand away, you would reveal canyons deeper than the Grand Canyon itself, carved by the Tamanrasset's torrents. Imagine standing at the edge of such a canyon, staring down into rock walls that whisper with the memory of thunderous water. To think that such grandeur lies hidden beneath dunes where the only sound now is the hiss of wind feels surreal. And scientists still wonder, why did the Tamanrasset die? Was it Earth's shifting tilt that starved the rains? Was it the retreat of monsoons, leaving the river to vanish piece by piece? Or is it possible that parts of it still linger underground, slowly flowing unseen, its pulse muffled but not gone? The debate continues, because its story isn't fully written. As you imagine walking its course, you sense the ghost current beneath your feet. You picture fish darting in deep pools, crocodiles basking in the sun, birds wheeling overhead. The desert, in this vision, transforms around you, palms swaying, grasses bending, animals gathering to drink. Then, just as quickly, the vision fades, replaced once more by sand and starlight. The river is gone, but its skeleton remains, and you are tracing its bones with every step. Above, the Milky Way arcs across the night sky, a river of stars echoing the river beneath. The symmetry is uncanny: two rivers, one lost below, one eternal above, both flowing across the desert. You realize that the Tamanrasset is not just gone, it has shifted realms, from a visible force of water to an invisible current of memory. You keep walking, following the skeleton westward in your imagination, and you feel it carrying you along like a gentle tide. The desert is silent, but the river still whispers. The trail of the Tamanrasset fades into the darkness behind you, and now the desert stretches forward again, vast and hushed. But this time, your thoughts turn not to the water itself, but to the people who once crossed these lands. You imagine caravans on the ancient Silk Road of the Sands, long lines of camels moving slowly, their padded feet pressing softly into the dunes. They were guided not just by stars and sun but, perhaps, by whispers of buried streams. For centuries, traders carried salt, gold, ivory, and stories across these arid routes, stitching together Africa, Arabia, and Asia. But survival in these deserts was never a matter of luck. It depended on knowing where water lingered. Nomads learned the secrets of hidden rivers, passed down across generations. A faint green patch in the distance, a subtle dip in the land, these were clues. Beneath them, perhaps, ran ancient channels of water, waiting to be tapped. Here's a fact to hold on to: in the Sahara and Arabian deserts, some caravan routes still trace the lines of ancient rivers. Even when the water was long gone, the paths remained, carved as much by necessity as by memory. Where rivers once flowed, people still walked, their journeys echoing the courses of streams buried beneath. And there's a quirky tidbit that lingers with you: camels, often called ships of the desert, sometimes refused to move forward until they had drunk deeply. Traders learned to trust their instincts, as though the animals themselves carried a map of underground rivers in their bones. Whether myth or subtle truth, the thought of camels sniffing out hidden water beneath the dunes adds a layer of mystery to the silence of the desert night. But scientists still wonder how many of these caravan routes were chosen deliberately for their hidden rivers, and how many were simply accidents of geography. Did ancient travelers know they were following the skeletons of forgotten waterways, or did they sense it unconsciously, guided by subtle traces, greener shrubs, fresher soil, cooler breezes? The debate remains open, like a map with faded ink, its paths not yet fully explained. You picture yourself walking alongside one of these caravans. The bells on the camels' necks jingle softly, the air smells faintly of spices and leather, and the stars above blaze as lanterns across the black sky. You hear traders murmuring in many languages, their voices blending with the crunch of hooves. Every few days, the caravan pauses, and a well is dug. The water that rises is ancient, cool, and clear, feeding both people and beasts before they move on. As you drift with the caravan through this imagined night, the desert feels less empty. It becomes a highway of memory, where lost rivers still guide invisible currents of trade and culture. The sand whispers with footsteps long faded, and yet you can almost hear them still. The desert holds not just water, but the stories of those who sought it, carrying their lives across lands that seem unlivable, yet were always sustained by what flowed beneath. The caravan bells fade behind you, their echoes absorbed into the dunes, and once more the silence folds in. Your thoughts wander to a river you know by name, a river that has never really left us, the Nile. But tonight, you don't follow its familiar course. Instead, you drift toward the forgotten branches, the secret arms of the ancient Nile that once spread wide through the desert plains. The Nile we know is a single line on a map, winding northward to the Mediterranean. Yet in the deep past, it was not so narrow in its reach. It had many branches, some of them stretching far into what is now barren desert. These lost tributaries carried life to places now marked only by sandstorms and silence. You imagine walking along one of these dry arms, the ground beneath you a bed that once glittered with fish, reeds, and crocodiles. One established fact remains striking: archaeologists using satellite radar have traced one of these ancient branches, called the Aramat branch, running near the pyramids of Giza. It was wide enough to ferry boats and fertile enough to support settlements along its banks. The pyramids themselves may have once stood not in isolation but along a living river, a waterway that helped transport stones and sustain workers. It changes how you picture those monuments, less lonely in the desert, more vibrant with the life of a flowing Nile arm at their feet. And here's a quirky detail: some geologists think that when the branch finally dried, its bed may have been repurposed as a path. Imagine walking along a perfectly straight road in the desert, only to discover that it was once a river, repaved by time itself. The idea that streets of sand could once have been streets of water gives the landscape a strange kind of double life. Yet scientists still wonder how many of these lost arms existed, and how far they reached. Were there dozens of channels weaving across the desert, linking distant oases to the Nile's main artery? Or were they fewer, more fragile, their disappearance sudden and absolute? The evidence is scattered, hidden beneath dunes, waiting for technology to pull it back into sight. As you picture these branches, you can almost hear them flowing again. The reeds sway gently in your mind, insects hum above pools of water, and children splash at the edges, laughing as they chase each other. You imagine boats gliding past, their sails catching a breeze under the same stars you see overhead now. The desert around you tonight is quiet, but in that quiet, you hold a new vision of the pyramids, not as lonely stone guardians in emptiness, but as neighbors to a living river. The arms of the Nile once reached out into the desert, and though the water is gone, the memory lingers like a faint heartbeat beneath the sand. You walk onward, tracing those ghost arms with your steps, as if following veins of history. The Nile's main body still flows far to the east, but its secret branches remain beneath you, whispering that even mighty rivers are not as fixed as we imagine. You step away from the Nile's vanished arms and drift south in your imagination, crossing into the wide expanses of southern Africa. Here, the Kalahari Desert spreads in soft waves of ochre and gold, a place that looks dry and eternal. Yet beneath its sands, too, whispers of rivers endure, hidden veins carrying stories of water through a land that seems parched. The Kalahari is not a desert in the strictest sense. It receives rain, enough to allow grasses, shrubs, and wildlife to survive. But much of its water hides underground, in channels and aquifers formed from rivers that once flowed freely across its plains. Scientists mapping the region have traced these buried waterways, networks that snake invisibly below, connecting salt pans, marshes, and seasonal lakes. One of the most famous of these is the Okavango, a river that seems to defy the rules, flowing into the sands, where it disappears rather than reaching the sea. An established fact anchors you here: every year, the Okavango Delta floods, spreading across thousands of square miles of the Kalahari, creating one of the richest wetlands on Earth. Elephants bathe, hippos grunt in shallow channels, fish scatter in silver flashes, and birds paint the skies with wings of every color. And yet, only a short distance away, the land dries into endless plains of sand, reminding you how fragile the balance of water is. There's a quirky tidbit to carry with you: ancient channels still lie beneath the Kalahari, and some researchers believe they may connect to rivers that once carried water all the way to the Indian Ocean. Imagine that, beneath your feet, a network of ghost rivers stretching toward coasts they no longer reach. Some of these channels are visible only from the air, faint green stripes etched across the land, their hidden flows still nourishing roots from below. Scientists still wonder how much of this underground water is moving and how much is fossilized, left behind from wetter times. Are the rivers beneath the Kalahari still alive, trickling through stone and sand, or are they only the bones of currents that once thrived? The question lingers, unanswerable in the silence of the desert night. As you picture it, you kneel and press your palm to the sand. You imagine the coolness rising faintly, a suggestion of moisture hidden deep below. Around you, the air is filled with the soft sounds of the living desert: jackals calling in the distance, the flutter of owls through moonlight, the rustle of grasses bent by a midnight breeze. The desert feels alive, but its life is subtle, fed by waters you cannot see. Walking on, you imagine tracing one of those hidden veins, following it like a map beneath the earth. Each step is guided by a current you cannot hear but know exists, steady and quiet. The Kalahari, like the Sahara, carries its own secret rivers, and the thought of them moving patiently beneath the sand soothes you, like a lullaby only the earth itself can sing. The sands of the Kalahari fade behind you, and your mind drifts farther still, across oceans, until you arrive in the wide heart of Australia. Here too, deserts stretch vast and silent, yet beneath them lie ghostly traces of rivers that once flowed with vigor. Australia's interior is one of the driest places on Earth, but it is also a place where water has left long, intricate fingerprints. From above, pilots sometimes notice winding patterns etched across the outback, pale, twisting shapes that mirror river channels, though no water runs through them now. These are Australia's ghost channels, dry beds that once carried water across plains now shimmering with heat. The Diamantina, the Georgina, the Cooper Creek, rivers that still exist in parts, but whose ancient extension sprawled much farther than today. They carried floods that spread like veins across the continent, forming networks that nourish trees, wildlife, and early people. Here's an established fact: Lake Eyre, in central Australia, is the final destination of these ghost rivers. Most of the time, it lies dry and cracked, its surface a salt pan reflecting the merciless sun. But on rare occasions, when floods are great enough, the rivers converge and the lake fills, becoming the largest body of water in the country. Pelicans arrive by the thousands, as though summoned by memory, turning the barren basin into a sudden sanctuary. And then, as quickly as it comes, the water vanishes again, leaving silence in its place. And here's a quirky tidbit that lingers sweetly. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories tell of serpents and spirits that carved these riverbeds as they slithered across the land, shaping channels that remain even when water does not. To walk along a ghost channel is to walk in the footsteps of myth, where geology and story flow together like twin streams. These tales remind you that the rivers are never truly gone, they remain alive in culture, in memory, in the imagination of those who walk the land. But scientists still wonder how far these ancient channels stretched, and whether some of them still feed underground aquifers today. Are there hidden flows beneath the cracked surface, quiet and slow, nourishing unseen ecosystems? Or have the rivers entirely retreated, leaving only their bones behind? The answer lies buried in sediments and sands, studied but never fully revealed. As you wander through this imagined landscape, you feel the crunch of salt under your feet, the shimmer of mirages bending the horizon. Then, in your mind's eye, a flood arrives suddenly, waters rushing, filling the ghost channels, spreading out in wide sheets of glittering blue. The silence erupts into sound, frogs croaking, birds calling, the rush of life returning. It lasts only a moment before fading again, leaving you once more in the desert night. The stars above reflect in the invisible lake, a reminder that even in the driest places, rivers still exist, if not in water, then in memory. And as you walk onward, you carry with you the image of Australia's ghost channels, long dry, but still flowing in the imagination. You leave behind the salt-crusted flats of Australia's ghost rivers, and your steps return to the Sahara, where an even greater story of water once shimmered across the land. In your imagination, the horizon bends into a wide and endless surface of rippling blue, the vanished lakes of the Sahara, vast mirrors of sky that have long since disappeared. Among them, one name rises like a memory of grandeur, Lake Megachad. At its peak, this lake was one of the largest bodies of fresh water the planet has ever seen, covering an area larger than modern France. Its shoreline stretched across what are now 4 different countries, feeding rivers, wildlife, and human communities. Imagine standing at its edge thousands of years ago. You would have seen waves brushing against a sandy shore, fishermen in dugout canoes, herds of animals drinking freely, and reeds swaying in the breeze. The Sahara was not an ocean of sand then, it was an ocean of water. One fact that remains remarkable is how quickly this lake shrank. Evidence shows that in just a few thousand years, Megachad dwindled from an inland sea to a patchwork of smaller lakes. Today, only Lake Chad remains, a fraction of its former size, and even it struggles to endure. The desert claimed the rest, turning water into sand, waves into dunes. There's a quirky tidbit hidden in this story too. In some places where Lake Megachad once spread, farmers today still pull up shells from their fields, tiny remnants of mollusks that once thrived in the lake. Imagine plowing dry soil and finding seashells in your hands, the past surfacing with every furrow. It's as if the desert is a stage set, and sometimes the props of earlier acts peek out to remind us what scenes once played here. But scientists still wonder what triggered the rapid drying. Was it a sudden shift in rainfall patterns, tied to Earth's orbital wobbles? Or did human pressures, early farming, deforestation, grazing, tip the balance toward desertification? The evidence suggests both natural cycles and human influence may have worked together, but the debate continues, reminding us how delicate the dance between water and sand can be. As you walk along the imagined shoreline of Megachad, the desert beneath your feet softens into damp earth. You hear the cries of birds overhead, the splash of fish in shallow water, the rustle of papyrus reeds taller than yourself. The vision is so strong you almost taste the humidity in the air, the freshness of water after a long day's journey. And then, with a blink, it vanishes, leaving only the cool dryness of desert night. The stars above shimmer more brightly in the emptiness, but you carry the image of those vanished lakes with you. They are not gone entirely. Their outlines remain visible from satellites, their shells rest in farmers' fields, their memory endures in fossils and myths. The Sahara is a desert now, but it once shimmered like glass with lakes that reflected the sky, and perhaps, one day, it might again. You step away from the vanished shorelines of Lake Megachad and drift eastward in thought, where the sands of Persia and its neighboring deserts hold a different kind of story. Here, water did not always flow openly across the surface. Instead, people learned to coax rivers into the earth itself, channeling them underground, away from the merciless sun. You imagine yourself descending into one of these ancient tunnels, cool air brushing your skin, the hush of dripping water echoing against stone walls. These tunnels are called kanets, and they are among humanity's most ingenious creations. An established fact, they date back more than 2,500 years, developed in Persia and spreading across the Middle East and North Africa. A kanet is a gently sloping tunnel that carries water from a higher aquifer or mountain spring into villages far below, relying only on gravity. No pumps, no machines, just the earth's own slope and human persistence. Even today, many kanets still function, sustaining farms and communities across deserts that otherwise could not survive. There's a quirky image to hold. From above, kanets appear as neat lines of round holes in the desert, like a string of pearls scattered across the sand. Each hole marks a vertical shaft dug by workers to access the tunnel below, both for construction and for maintenance. Travelers who stumble upon these dotted lines across barren landscapes often wonder at their strange precision, not realizing they are looking at the lifeline of entire civilizations. But scientists and historians still wonder how ancient builders managed such engineering feats with such accuracy. Without modern surveying tools, how did they keep the slope perfect over miles of desert, ensuring the water flowed smoothly without flooding or stalling? The debate lingers, a reminder of the quiet brilliance of those who came before us. As you walk through the imagined kanet, the tunnel is dim, but a faint gleam of light seeps from the shafts above. The air is cool and damp, carrying the scent of wet earth. You hear the slow trickle of water along the stone channel, steady as a heartbeat. It feels almost like walking inside the veins of the desert itself, surrounded by the hidden lifeblood that keeps it alive. Eventually, you emerge at the far end of the kanet, where the water spills into a cistern or irrigation channel. Around it, green fields stretch unexpectedly across the desert floor, wheat, barley, fruit trees, and date palms. Children laugh and run in the shade, farmers bend to tend their crops, and animals graze nearby. All of it, every sound and scent and movement, depends on that silent tunnel you just walked through. You glance back toward the desert, vast and empty, and then toward the fields, lush and vibrant. The two realities coexist, separated only by a layer of stone and sand. Above, silence and heat, below, murmurs of water. It's a reminder that deserts are not merely places of absence. They are landscapes with hidden depth, places where ingenuity meets patience, and where rivers are coaxed into secrecy so that life can bloom in the open. You leave the shadowed kanets behind and step once more into the open night, where the desert breathes its quiet rhythm. The silence feels deeper now, as though the sands themselves are trying to whisper something just beyond hearing. You pause, close your eyes, and listen, not to the wind, not to the scrape of sand shifting across dunes, but to the imagined soundscape beneath. Somewhere in the dark earth, faint currents may still be moving, muffled streams weaving through stone. It's a fact worth remembering, sound travels differently underground. Subterranean water moving through porous rock doesn't roar like surface rivers, it sighs, hums, resonates softly. Geologists sometimes lower sensitive microphones into wells, and what they capture is a faint gurgle, like the earth quietly clearing its throat. It's not dramatic, but it is profoundly soothing. There's a quirky detail here too. Nomadic herders have long claimed they could sometimes hear water beneath the desert at night. Lying on the ground, with ear pressed to the sand, they described faint rhythms, as if the desert floor carried its own heartbeat. Whether that's heightened imagination, keen hearing, or perhaps the desert amplifying distant sounds in mysterious ways, the image lingers, men and women listening to the earth as though it were telling them secrets. But scientists still wonder whether such subterranean acoustics could ever be heard unaided, or if the stories are metaphors passed through tradition. Does the desert truly hum, or do people simply tune into its silence so deeply that their minds begin to weave the suggestion of hidden currents? The debate rests somewhere between physics and poetry, a reminder that not all mysteries are meant to be solved. As you stand there in your imagination, the desert becomes an instrument. The wind plays across the dunes like strings, and the buried aquifers add a low, steady drone. You find yourself swaying slightly, as though the whole land is singing a lullaby too soft for most ears. Above you, the night sky feels like another soundscape, silent to your ears, but alive with vibrations of starlight and cosmic hums. The desert beneath and the heavens above mirror each other, both filled with unheard music, both carrying frequencies that slip beyond your awareness. You keep walking slowly, letting this imagined soundscape wrap around you. The crunch of your steps becomes part of the rhythm, the steady beat grounding the faint murmurs of the earth. Each dune you cross feels less like sand and more like a wave of silence breaking gently. In this quiet, you realize that deserts are not empty at all. They are full of sound, just a sound too delicate, too patient, to rush itself. You hear it not with your ears, but with your imagination, and that makes it all the more real. The faint hum of hidden water fades into the background of your thoughts, and now the desert begins to open like a vast storybook of myth. For as long as humans have wandered through these landscapes, they have spoken of water in ways that blur fact with legend. You picture yourself sitting at a campfire in the heart of the sands, the stars glimmering above, and nomads gathered around telling stories of rivers that once flowed freely, rivers that might still run beneath the earth. One established fact is that almost every desert culture we know has woven water into its mythology. In Mesopotamia, rivers were considered divine gifts, their flooding seen as both blessings and threats from the gods. In the Arabian deserts, oases were imagined as sacred places, touched by the divine. Even the story of Eden, lush and watered by 4 great rivers, lingers in some traditions as a memory of a place that may have once stood near lands that are now dry. And then there are the quirky tales, small and peculiar. Some desert travelers whispered of phantom streams that appeared under the moonlight, shimmering just out of reach, only to vanish at dawn. Others spoke of rivers guarded by serpents or jinn, whose waters promised eternal youth but at great risk. These stories might sound fanciful, yet they reflect something deeply human, the yearning for water in places where it hides. To imagine a spirit guarding a spring is simply another way of saying the spring is precious, not to be wasted. But scientists still wonder whether such myths carry hidden truths, folk memories of real rivers that once existed. Could the story of Eden, for example, echo a time when fertile plains and rivers stretched across regions now arid? Could the tales of rivers guarded by spirits be poetic echoes of aquifers and springs too rare to be trusted openly? The line between history and legend is blurred by sand, and each story feels like both. As you walk deeper into this imagined night, you let the myths rise around you. You see a serpent silhouette rippling through dunes, carving a channel that becomes a riverbed. You hear the laughter of unseen spirits playing at the edges of an oasis. You imagine Eden itself, not as a single garden but as the memory of all lost rivers, all vanished greenness. The desert wind brushes against your cheek, carrying the warmth of the day long past. You glance upward, and the Milky Way stretches like a river of stars across the sky, a reminder that humans have always looked for water, whether in the ground or in the heavens. Rivers and myths flow together, each feeding the other, each carrying the hope that somewhere, just beyond reach, life still moves in silence. And so you walk on, guided by stories as much as by memory. Beneath the sands, rivers may still whisper. Around the campfires, their myths continue to flow. And you realize that in deserts, fact and legend are not opposites, they are companions, walking side by side like twin currents in the same hidden stream. You move onward, carrying the myths with you, until the desert itself shifts beneath your imagination. The dunes ripple like waves, and suddenly you see them not as still, but as part of a cycle, breathing in long rhythms of time. Here, the Sahara reminds you of its greatest secret, its tendency to change, to pulse between desert and grassland in vast, repeating patterns. This is the essence of the Sahara pump theory, the idea that climate has repeatedly turned this ocean of sand into a green world, only to let it dry again. An established fact anchors the thought: Earth's orbit wobbles slightly over tens of thousands of years, changing how sunlight falls on the continents. When the tilt and position align just right, monsoon rains sweep northward, drenching the Sahara, filling rivers, and spreading lakes across the desert. Thousands of years later, the orbit shifts again, the rains retreat, and sand reclaims the land. These pulses are written in sediments, fossils, and even DNA records of animals and people who moved with the water. There's a quirky image hidden in this story: crocodiles in the desert. Fossil evidence shows they once swam in Saharan rivers and lakes, far from their modern homes. To imagine crocodiles basking where dunes now rise feels surreal, yet it is true. Their bones tell you that this desert was once a place of rippling waters, not just endless sand. But scientists still wonder about the timing and strength of these cycles. How quickly did the Sahara shift from green to gold? Was it a slow fading of rains, giving people and animals time to adapt, or a more sudden collapse that forced migrations in only a few generations? And crucially, will the cycle repeat? Some models suggest that thousands of years from now, monsoons could return, and the Sahara could bloom again. Others argue that modern climate change may have altered the rhythm forever. The debate lingers, like the distant promise of thunderclouds that never quite arrive. You picture yourself standing in this pulsing desert, watching it transform. First, the dunes dissolve into grass, tall and swaying in a warm breeze. Wildebeest move across the plains, flocks of birds rise in arcs, and shallow lakes glitter under the sun. Then, slowly, the grasses turn brown, the lakes shrink, the animals retreat, and sand sweeps back across the horizon, burying everything in silence once more. The land breathes in green, breathes out gold, in cycles longer than human lives can count. Above you, the stars gleam, steady and unchanging compared to the restless earth below. Yet even they are part of cycles, their light pulsing, their lifespans unfolding across millions of years. You realize then that everything breathes in rhythms: stars, rivers, deserts, even your own body, standing quietly in the sand. You walk onward, the Sahara stretching before you. It feels less like a barren expanse and more like a living thing, resting now, waiting for its next breath of water. The desert is not permanent, it is patient. The rhythm of the Sahara's great pulse still hums in your thoughts as you drift further into the desert night. You picture people, nomads, wanderers, dwellers of the sands, who have always known how to listen to that rhythm. For in places where the land hides its water, survival depends not on brute strength, but on ingenuity, patience, and memory. One established fact is that desert dwellers have long relied on wells sunk deep into aquifers, sometimes hundreds of feet below the surface. In the Sahara, in the Arabian Peninsula, even in the Kalahari, entire communities have survived because their ancestors learned to follow subtle clues: a cluster of greener shrubs, a dip in the ground, the tracks of animals converging toward a spot. Each clue whispers of water hidden beneath. And there is a quirky tidbit that lingers in the imagination: Bedouins in Arabia sometimes judged the moisture of the soil by tasting a handful of sand. They claimed they could sense the faint coolness of hidden groundwater with their tongues. Whether science or myth, the act itself is a reminder of how closely people once paid attention to the land, reading it like a book written in grains of dust. But scientists still wonder how much of this ancient knowledge we've forgotten. Nomadic traditions passed from generation to generation held maps of hidden springs and underground rivers, often remembered in songs, poems, or stories. Many of these oral maps are fading as lifestyles change, leaving modern researchers scrambling to rediscover what desert peoples once knew instinctively. Were there entire networks of underground channels charted in memory alone? Or have some been lost forever, buried as deeply as the waters themselves? You imagine yourself walking alongside a caravan led by Tuareg guides. They move with quiet confidence, never doubting where to turn. The sun blazes overhead, but they know where shade and water can be found, even in stretches of emptiness. You follow them to a shallow depression, where they dig with practiced hands. Soon, moisture darkens the sand, and water seeps upward, cool and clear. For them, this is no miracle, it is skill, refined over centuries of living with the desert's secrets. Around the well, goats gather, women fill clay jars, and children laugh as they splash handfuls of water on their faces. Life here is not easy, but it is possible because of an intimate partnership with hidden rivers. These people do not see the desert as empty, but as alive with quiet resources, waiting for those who know how to ask gently. The stars brighten overhead, constellations stretching across the blackness. You realize that the nomads carry two maps, one of the heavens, one of the sands. With stars above and rivers below, they walk between two worlds of guidance. The desert may look barren to outsiders, but for them, it is a library of signs, each dune and shadow hinting at what lies beneath. You keep walking with them in your imagination, soothed by their certainty. The desert feels less intimidating now, more like a companion. Its hidden rivers may not roar, but they still sustain, shaping not just landscapes, but cultures, stories, and ways of being that endure even in silence. The image of nomads tracing hidden rivers across the sands lingers, but your thoughts lift upward now, toward a red world circling far away in the night sky. Mars glows faintly above you, steady and distant, and you can't help but wonder, could the stories of lost rivers here on Earth mirror those on another desert planet? One established fact is that Mars shows clear evidence of once flowing water. Satellite images reveal dried-up river valleys, deltas, and even what appear to be ancient lakebeds. Billions of years ago, its surface may have carried rivers as wide as the Mississippi, shaping channels that remain etched into its rocky skin. Today, though, Mars is barren, its rivers as silent as the ghost streams beneath Earth's deserts. The resemblance is uncanny, two planets, both holding whispers of water long gone. Here's a quirky thought to carry with you. In 2015, scientists found dark streaks on Martian slopes that appeared to flow and fade with the seasons. Some believed they were briny trickles of liquid water, seeping out in the warmth of the Martian summer. The discovery sparked excitement and debate, imagining rivulets running briefly across red dust, like the tiniest echoes of ancient floods. Later studies cast doubt, suggesting dry landslides instead. Yet the idea of Mars weeping with seasonal rivers has stuck in the collective imagination, like a mirage that refuses to fade. And scientists still wonder, how much water lies hidden beneath Mars's surface? Radar surveys have hinted at subsurface lakes, trapped beneath layers of ice and dust. Could they still flow slowly in the dark, like Earth's aquifers beneath the Sahara? Or are they frozen in place, silent and unmoving, reminders of a wetter past that can never return? The debate continues, leaving Mars both familiar and strange, a mirror of Earth's deserts in its silence. As you picture it, the sands around you shift into red dust. The stars seem sharper against the black Martian sky, and the horizon glows faintly with a pale sun. You walk across dry channels, their beds littered with pebbles that once tumbled in moving water. You imagine ancient Martian rivers flowing beneath your feet, unseen but not forgotten, their currents hidden in memory and stone. The comparison is soothing, in its way. Deserts are not only places on Earth, they are landscapes of the cosmos, repeating themselves in patterns of loss and remembrance. You stand between two deserts now, one of golden sand, one of red dust, both whispering the same story, that water flows, then fades, but always leaves its mark. You turn back to Earth in your mind, the Sahara stretching once more beneath your feet. The rivers here may still flow below, faint and hidden, while Mars's rivers remain frozen in silence. Yet in both, the mystery is the same, the search for water, the longing for currents in the quiet. Mars fades back into the heavens above, and once more you are rooted in the desert, its silence wrapping around you like a blanket. But beneath that silence lies another layer of mystery, not just fresh water, but salt and secrets hidden below. The underground reservoirs of deserts are not always sweet and drinkable, often they are briny, infused with minerals, preserving their age like liquid fossils. One established fact is that beneath parts of the Sahara, deep aquifers contain water so ancient it fell as rain tens of thousands of years ago. Trapped underground, it has dissolved salts and minerals from the surrounding rocks, becoming brackish, even undrinkable in places. And yet, this salty water tells its own story. Geologists can read its chemistry like a diary, learning when it last touched the sky as rain, how it traveled through stone, and what climates existed long before deserts claimed the surface. Here's a quirky tidbit to hold in your mind. Some of these aquifers preserve microorganisms, tiny life forms that have survived in complete darkness, feeding on minerals, cut off from the world above. They live in ecosystems sealed away for tens of thousands of years, as if time itself paused around them. Imagine scooping a vial of this water and realizing you are holding life that has never seen the sun. But scientists still wonder how much of this water remains connected, and how much is locked away forever. Are these briny aquifers part of ancient rivers still trickling in the dark, or are they simply stagnant pockets, memories in liquid form, waiting to evaporate or be drawn away by human hands? And could studying them offer clues not only to Earth's past but to the possibilities of life in hidden oceans beneath other worlds, like Mars or Europa? The questions ripple outward like circles in a pond, their answers still sinking. As you imagine it, you kneel on the desert floor and touch the sand. Beneath your palm lies not just dryness, but strata of salt, stone, and water, layered together like pages in an ancient book. You picture clear pockets glistening in the dark, others thick with brine, glowing faintly with crystals of salt. The desert, which seems so simple on the surface, is in fact a labyrinth of hidden chemistry. The stars above sparkle cold and steady, like grains of salt scattered across black velvet. You feel a kinship between the desert floor and the sky, both full of crystals, both holding secrets in their stillness. And in the quiet, you realize that water doesn't always mean rivers or lakes. Sometimes it lingers as brine, as memory, as a salty whisper hidden in stone, waiting for the patient hands of time to reveal it again. You rise and continue walking, the desert crunching softly beneath you. Each step feels as though it crosses not just sand, but layers of hidden seas preserved below, ancient, silent, but never truly gone. The briny secrets beneath the desert fade into silence, and your imagination carries you onward to rivers of a different kind, rivers made not of flowing water, but of stone. You begin to notice the landscape shifting around you. In the moonlight, the dunes give way to stretches of hardened channels, the ghostly imprints of water turn solid. These are petrified rivers, their currents frozen forever into rock. One established fact is that in many deserts, especially in North Africa and the Middle East, scientists have found ancient channels where rushing water once carved deep paths. Over time, minerals filled these channels, solidifying them until they became stone replicas of the rivers they once contained. To walk through one of these channels is to step into a sculpture carved by both water and time, a river that once sang with life but now lies silent, its voice captured in rock. And there is a quirky tidbit too. In some places, you can find trees that once grew along these riverbanks, now turned entirely to stone. Their trunks, once fed by water, are transformed into fossilized wood, glittering with crystals of quartz. Imagine touching a tree that feels smooth as glass, knowing it once shaded the banks of a river that no longer exists. It's like running your hand across a photograph, only the image is three-dimensional and millions of years old. But scientists still wonder about the full history of these petrified channels. How much water did they carry? How long did they flow before they hardened into silence? Were they brief floods, appearing and vanishing like whispers, or were they mighty rivers lasting thousands of years? The evidence is written in stone, but the translation is incomplete, leaving geologists piecing together a story that spans epochs. You walk slowly through one of these imagined stone channels. The walls rise on either side of you, smooth and carved, as though you are following a riverbed where time itself has stopped. You run your hand along the edge, cool and solid, but in your mind you hear splashing currents, birds calling, and reeds swaying. The petrified river carries both realities, the silence of stone and the echo of water. Above, the stars shimmer like droplets frozen in midair, scattered across the dark sky. For a moment, the desert around you feels timeless. Rivers of water, rivers of stone, rivers of memory, they all flow together, weaving a story that continues even when the currents stop. You keep walking, and each step rings softly on the hardened channel. It feels as though you are walking across a fossilized song, a melody preserved in rock, waiting for a listener. And you, in this quiet night, are that listener. The petrified channels fade behind you, their silence giving way once more to the soft crunch of sand underfoot. As you walk, your thoughts turn toward the present, the fragile balance of deserts today, where hidden rivers still shape life, even if unseen. Beneath the vast dunes, aquifers and fossil waters continue to sustain people, animals, and plants. They are the quiet foundation on which desert survival rests. One established fact is that much of northern Africa's drinking water now comes from underground reservoirs. In Libya, for example, the great man-made river project taps into fossil aquifers beneath the Sahara, channeling ancient water to cities along the coast. Entire modern communities, millions of lives, depend on rivers that flow silently beneath the sands, never surfacing. These hidden waters are both a blessing and a warning. Their age means they cannot be replaced quickly, if at all. They are like inheritance, not income, drawn down with every use. And here's a quirky detail: desert plants themselves are masters of balance. Some species of acacia can extend their roots more than 50 meters deep, probing downward until they tap an unseen water table. Standing beneath such a tree, you would never guess its roots stretch farther than a 15-story building is tall. It's a reminder that the desert is not barren, it is simply adapted, its life tethered to invisible currents below. Yet scientists still wonder how long these hidden rivers can last in the face of growing demand and changing climate. Will they sustain future generations, or will they fade, leaving behind empty wells and parched roots? The question is as much about human stewardship as it is about geology. The desert holds its secrets generously, but not endlessly. As you imagine walking through a present-day oasis town, you hear the laughter of children playing near fountains fed by underground pipes, the call of a market where dates and melons are sold, the hum of life flourishing in an improbable place. All of it is sustained by rivers that no one can see, waters that linger silently in stone chambers far below. You look up at the stars, and they remind you of balance too. They burn steadily, but each one is finite, its fuel slowly spent over billions of years. Like stars, underground rivers shine in their own way, not with light, but with life. And like stars, they are fragile, not eternal. Walking onward into the night, you sense how delicate the desert's balance truly is. It is not empty, not lifeless. It is alive because of hidden rivers, because of roots reaching downward, because of patience. The desert survives not in spite of its silence, but because of it. And so, with each step, you tread gently, aware that beneath your feet, the desert's secret rivers still flow, shaping the fragile harmony of life above. The desert's present-day balance lingers in your thoughts, but now your imagination stretches forward, toward the future. You picture the skies shifting, the winds changing, and rains returning to places long starved of water. What if the monsoons shifted again, as they have before? What if empty basins filled once more, and rivers flowed where sand now lies silent? One established fact is that Earth's climate has always pulsed in cycles. The African humid period, not so long ago in geological terms, transformed the Sahara into savanna and woodland, dotted with lakes and rivers. Scientists know it happened because they found pollen grains trapped in ancient sediments, fossils of hippos and crocodiles where dunes now rise, and cave paintings of people paddling canoes across what is now barren land. The evidence is clear: the Sahara bloomed, and then it withered, more than once. Here's a quirky detail: in Chad, near the edge of the desert, villagers today still find harpoons carved from bone in the sand, tools used to fish in lakes that vanished thousands of years ago. Imagine walking across dunes and stumbling on a fishing spear, lying forgotten in a place now devoid of water. It feels almost like the desert plays tricks, revealing artifacts from a past so unlikely it seems like a dream. But scientists still wonder, will those rains ever return? Models suggest that shifts in Earth's orbit and tilt could once again bring monsoons sweeping northward, greening the Sahara. Yet human-driven climate change complicates the rhythm. Rising greenhouse gases alter the winds and patterns of rainfall, making it unclear whether the Great Desert will bloom again or remain locked in dryness. Some researchers believe the Sahara could one day pulse green once more, while others fear that warming may silence its cycles permanently. As you imagine it, clouds gather across the horizon. You feel the first drops of rain, warm against your skin, sinking quickly into the sand. Then the storm builds, steady, nourishing, relentless. The desert floor darkens, seeds long buried spring awake, grasses push upward, and the dunes dissolve into meadows. Rivers reappear, carving their channels, glinting silver under the rising sun. The stars overhead fade into dawn light and the desert feels renewed, alive in a way it hasn't been in millennia. You picture herds returning, people settling, birds nesting in wetlands where silence once reigned. The Sahara is no longer an ocean of sand, but a quilt of rivers, lakes, and green valleys. Then the vision softens, slipping away like a mirage. You are back in the quiet night, the desert dry and still. Yet the possibility remains, humming faintly beneath the silence. Deserts are not permanent, they are pauses. And someday, perhaps, the rains will write new rivers into the sand. The thought of returning rains lingers as you walk deeper into the quiet night, and now your imagination stretches even farther forward, to ages beyond your lifetime, when the Sahara itself may change again. You wonder, what will the desert's future pulse look like? Will the sands remain endless, or will they once again surrender to water and green? One established fact offers perspective. Climate models show that Earth's orbital rhythms will continue to shift. In about 10,000 to 20,000 years, monsoon rains could sweep northward again, greening the Sahara. It has happened before, it can happen again. To think of such timescales is to feel the vast patience of the planet, cycles measured not in years but in millennia. The desert is not a final state, only a chapter. Here's a quirky thought that sticks with you: buried in the Sahara today are seeds that have lain dormant for centuries. Scientists have found that some desert seeds can sprout after astonishing lengths of time if given the right conditions. Imagine a rainfall so heavy that seeds older than any human alive today suddenly burst into life, covering dunes in flowers. The desert might bloom not with newness, but with a memory, plants reborn from ancient sleep. Yet scientists still wonder how modern climate change will reshape these natural pulses. Human-driven warming could interfere with the Sahara's cycles, delaying or even preventing the greening that orbital rhythms might otherwise bring. Will the future desert be greener than ever before, or harsher, locked in dryness? No one knows for certain. The future of the Sahara is not written in stone, it is written in the shifting dialogue between Earth's rhythms and humanity's choices. You picture the desert in both possibilities. In one vision, rivers return, lakes spread wide, and wildlife roams once more across grassy plains. Villages rise where dunes once stood, sustained by fertile soil and flowing streams. In another, the sands expand further, swallowing oases, scattering life, until only whispers of water remain hidden deep below. Both futures feel real, both waiting at the edges of time. As you walk across the present desert, stars glinting cold above, you realize that you are stepping through a place of transformation. The Sahara is not fixed, it is alive with change, breathing in water, breathing out sand, in rhythms older than humanity itself. Its pulse may slow, may falter, but it never stops entirely. You let this awareness settle over you like a blanket. The desert does not promise answers, it offers patience. To walk here is to walk inside time itself, surrounded by whispers of what was, what is, and what may yet come. The vision of a future Sahara lingers, but as you walk, your thoughts return to the people who have always lived alongside these shifting landscapes. Hidden rivers are not only geological mysteries, they are threads in human memory, shaping where civilizations rose, where they thrived, and where they disappeared. One established fact is that some of humanity's earliest settlements grew not beside modern rivers, but along ones that have since vanished. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of ancient villages in the Sahara, their pottery shards and hearthstones resting where no water flows today. These settlements suggest that rivers once cut across the desert, supporting farmers, herders, and traders who relied on their currents. Civilizations are like shadows cast by rivers, their shape defined by the water that sustains them. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe that the River of Egypt mentioned in old texts may not have been the Nile at all, but one of its lost tributaries. Imagine building temples or carving stories into stone beside a branch of the Nile that no longer exists, a river erased from sight but still echoing in language and myth. Words, like fossils, can outlast the waters they once described. Yet scientists still wonder just how extensive these lost river systems were, and how directly they influenced human migration. Did ancient peoples follow drying rivers northward into fertile lands, leaving behind ghost settlements? Did rivers guide trade routes across regions we now call impassable? Or were some rivers too fleeting, their memory preserved only in scattered artifacts and songs? The debates continue, fragments pieced together like shards of a broken vessel. You imagine yourself standing among the ruins of one such forgotten settlement. The walls are low, stones worn smooth by centuries of sand, but you can almost hear voices, farmers calling to each other, children laughing by the riverbank, boats creaking gently on the current. Then you blink, and the ruins are empty once more, only the desert wind whistling through the gaps. The river is gone, and yet its influence remains in the bones of a village, in the faint outlines of fields that once thrived. The desert around you feels less empty as you walk. Every dune might cover a hearth, every stone could be a tool, every shadow might conceal the memory of a river. Human history, like water, does not vanish, it leaves traces that can still be followed, if you know how to listen. Above you, the stars shimmer as they always have, watching as civilizations rise and fall, as rivers flow and fade. They are silent witnesses to both water and memory, constant where everything else shifts. And as you keep walking, you sense that the desert beneath your feet is a vast library, its pages written in sand, its ink the rivers that once gave it life. You step away from the ruins in your imagination, and once again the desert itself rises around you, its dunes tall and endless. Now you begin to notice the desert's slow and patient work, how the sand itself moves, how it buries, how it releases. The quiet labor of dunes is as constant as the tides of an unseen ocean. They shift grain by grain, covering what once lived, then years later revealing it again. One established fact is that deserts are never still. The wind lifts sand into the air, drifts it across the landscape, and deposits it elsewhere. Entire dunes can migrate over time, swallowing villages, roads, even ancient rivers. Archaeologists have found wells and settlements buried beneath meters of sand, perfectly preserved until storms uncovered them centuries later. The desert is both archivist and eraser, hiding memories even as it protects them. And here's a quirky tidbit, sometimes after a sandstorm, nomads stumble upon artifacts suddenly laid bare, a pot, a tool, a fossilized bone. It's as if the desert decided to return a piece of its memory, only for a moment, before covering it again. The dunes are playful in this way, offering glimpses of what lies beneath, never revealing everything at once. But scientists still wonder about the full extent of what remains hidden below. How many ancient rivers, how many settlements, how many fossils lie waiting, sealed away under dunes that shift with every season? The desert's work is slow but unending, and the treasures it guards may remain untouched for centuries more. Researchers debate whether modern technology, radar, satellites, drilling, will ever reveal the full map of the Sahara's hidden layers. For now, most of its secrets remain cloaked in sand. You picture yourself standing atop a tall dune. The wind stings your face gently, carrying sand like a soft spray. Below, the landscape is in motion, ripples forming, dunes sliding, the ground shifting beneath your feet. It feels alive, as though the desert itself is breathing, inhaling and exhaling through the slow dance of sand. As you watch, the dunes part in your imagination, revealing a buried riverbed below. The sand has hidden it for centuries, but tonight, under the stars, it gleams faintly in moonlight. For a moment, you see water there, shimmering, flowing, alive. Then a gust passes, and the vision vanishes, swallowed once more by drifting grains. The stars above mirror this rhythm. Clouds of cosmic dust shift across the galaxy, hiding and revealing light in cycles as patient as dunes. Above and below, the universe plays the same game: conceal, reveal, conceal again. You walk onward, realizing the desert is not just a grave for lost rivers, but a caretaker. It hides them, preserves them, and sometimes, when the wind is right, lets them be seen again, if only in fragments. The shifting dunes fade behind you, and now you find yourself more aware of each step you take. The desert floor feels steady yet mysterious, as though beneath every grain of sand lies something waiting. You pause for a moment, looking down, and you imagine what truly rests beneath your feet. It isn't just rock or dust, it could be the unseen course of a river, still flowing quietly in darkness. One established fact is that aquifers stretch beneath much of the Sahara, Arabia, and other great deserts, some of them vast enough to rival modern lakes. They are not visible, but they exist, buried hundreds of meters below. These waters are tapped by wells and pumps, but even beyond human reach, some may still flow slowly through porous stone, creeping onward like shadows of the past. And here's a quirky detail to hold on to: explorers in the early 20th century sometimes reported hearing strange echoes when they stomped their boots on certain desert flats, as though the ground beneath were hollow. Some speculated it was the sound of caverns or underground channels carrying vibrations. Whether that's geology or imagination, the idea lingers, that beneath your step, the earth might be resonating with hidden rivers. But scientists still wonder how connected these underground systems really are. Do they form vast networks, like veins beneath the skin of the desert, or are they isolated pockets of water, stranded and still? Are there rivers moving beneath you right now, weaving unseen courses in the dark, or only quiet pools, waiting to be drawn upward one last time? The evidence is partial, the answer uncertain, and the mystery deepens with each study. As you stand there in your imagination, you press your palm gently against the sand. You picture the coolness far below, a faint current winding like a silver thread in the blackness. You imagine roots reaching down to sip from it, insects burrowing to find its dampness, and perhaps even fish long ago, swimming through channels that are now closed forever. You take a slow step forward, and the thought follows you: beneath every footfall lies a secret. Some steps cross rivers buried for thousands of years, others brush above aquifers holding waters older than civilizations, and still others tread upon stone channels carved when climates were entirely different. Each step is both simple and profound: surface above, memory below. The stars overhead mirror your steps, each one resting above a history you cannot see, a light that traveled millions of years to reach you. In the same way, the ground beneath carries its own long journey, water flowing, fading, and hiding before you ever arrived. You keep walking softly, knowing that beneath your feet, rivers may still murmur. You cannot see them, but you can feel their presence, as steady and reassuring as the sand itself. You keep walking, and the night feels deeper now, quieter, as though the desert itself is winding down. Yet beneath you, you sense one more story, the story of rivers fading, the last drops of memory still clinging to the earth. Aquifers that once brimmed with ice age rains now rest half empty, their reserves dwindling with each passing century. It is here, in these vanishing waters, that the desert holds its most delicate whispers. One established fact is that many of the Sahara's great aquifers are non-renewable. They were filled thousands of years ago, when the climate was wetter, and little or no rain falls today to replenish them. Every well that taps them draws from a one-time gift, draining the last echoes of rivers long gone. Scientists call this fossil water, and once it is gone, it will not return in any human time frame. It is the Earth's savings account, not its income, and it is being spent down. There's a quirky detail that lingers in this truth: some of these waters are so old they contain traces of noble gases, tiny chemical time capsules that allow scientists to date them. Imagine drinking from a well and realizing that what you hold in your hands has not touched the surface since mammoths still walked the earth. Every sip is a communion with prehistory, with storms that fell on landscapes utterly unlike the desert you stand in now. But scientists still wonder how much time remains for these aquifers. Will they last centuries, sustaining towns and oases? Or are they already near exhaustion, their quiet reservoirs nearly empty? Some argue that small underground flows may still move between basins, connecting pockets of water like secret corridors. Others believe that once the pumps fall silent, only dry stone will remain. The debate is ongoing, and the desert keeps its secrets close. You imagine kneeling beside a desert well at night. The rope creaks as a bucket descends, vanishing into darkness. When it rises again, droplets glisten faintly in the moonlight, sliding down the wood, falling back into the depths. You take a sip, and the water tastes ancient, slightly mineral, a flavor older than memory itself. The well feels bottomless, yet you know it is not. Its silence holds the weight of endings as much as beginnings. Above, the stars shimmer coldly, themselves remnants of ages long past, their light already a form of fossil memory. You feel a kinship between the water beneath and the light above, both traveling through time, both reaching you long after their origins. Both fragile, fleeting, and precious. You rise and continue walking. Each step feels gentler now, as though the sand beneath is fragile glass, as though the rivers below could vanish with a sigh. The desert hums faintly with memory, but its song is quieting, drop by drop. The wells fade behind you, and the desert feels almost timeless now, as if you are walking not through a landscape, but through memory itself. You imagine one last vision, an eternal murmur of hidden waters, rivers that still dream beneath the sands even when their voices are silent. One established fact brings the thought closer: deep beneath many deserts, water continues to flow, though it may move only inches each year. These subterranean rivers are patient beyond imagination, coursing through limestone, seeping through sandstone, tracing paths carved in ages before humanity. Their currents are invisible, but they exist, shaping the earth quietly, like veins of the planet itself. And here's a quirky detail to hold in your mind: desert explorers have sometimes reported hearing what they swore was running water when they slept near certain cliffs or canyons. In reality, it may have been the wind echoing through hollows, but the idea remains enchanting, that the desert itself might hum with the ghost song of the rivers below. The desert plays its illusions well, blurring the border between sound and silence. But scientists still wonder, are there rivers beneath the sands that have never once seen the light of day? Rivers that have flowed entirely underground for tens of thousands of years, unknown to maps, untouched by wells, still moving quietly in the dark. The evidence is elusive, but the possibility lingers, like a question whispered by the earth itself. As you walk into this final stretch, the desert softens around you. The dunes feel less like obstacles and more like blankets, draped across a resting world. Beneath them, you imagine rivers dreaming, currents that no longer rush, but drift, slow and eternal, like thoughts half asleep. They are not lost. They are simply hidden, like memories waiting for the right moment to return. You pause, close your eyes, and listen. There is no sound but the wind, yet in the quiet, you feel it, a rhythm beneath your feet, steady as a heartbeat, ancient as the stars above. The desert is not empty. It murmurs with hidden waters, eternal in their patience, carrying the memory of what was and the promise of what could be. You take one final step, and the desert embraces you in its silence. The rivers may be unseen, but they are here, flowing still, reminding you that nothing truly disappears, it only changes form, waiting beneath the surface. Now the desert begins to fade from your imagination, like a mirage dissolving with the dawn. The dunes soften, the rivers quiet, and even the stars above dim gently, as though the whole world is settling into rest. You let your breath slow, long and steady, mirroring the patient rhythms of hidden waters below the sand. The stories of ancient rivers remain with you, but their urgency has melted away. Instead, they become background whispers, like the faint hum of air at night, soothing and constant. You no longer need to follow them, or to wonder where they lead. It is enough to know they are there, flowing quietly, holding the memory of time. Picture the desert as a great blanket of gold and silver, laid across the earth to keep its secrets safe. Beneath that blanket, rivers still dream, winding slowly, never lost. You do not need to uncover them tonight. You can simply rest, knowing they are there, their patience infinite, their presence steady. The sand beneath you grows softer, almost like a bed, and the air cools around you. Your body feels heavy in the most comforting way, as if the desert itself is carrying you. Each star above seems to blink slower, longer, until the sky itself feels drowsy. The world narrows into stillness, into calm, into peace. You are safe here, held gently between silence and flow, between memory and dream. The desert no longer asks you to walk. It simply asks you to rest, to drift, to let go. And as you exhale one last time, you hear it, the eternal murmur of hidden waters, steady and soothing, carrying you into sleep.